And if you can zoom in and get that URL, that's one of the locations. This is live and available. I just want to make sure you guys know that this is real. And I apologize for camera angling and things. I'm trying to do a lot with a lot of different things right now. Um, but here it is. Full testimony and victim impact statement of one Mike Gagnon regarding investigation of Kent Burrows. This is a copy of a witness impact and testimony statement that is in possession of a U.S.-based attorney to be released to public and media without alteration should something happen to me or should I be rendered unable to speak for myself. The version below has had some specific names redacted to protect the innocent. This is true. I do have someone in another country who works in the legal profession holding copies of documents to release to media if something happens to me or is done against me by the person in question, Mr. Kent Burrows. As stated in our previous emails, I appeal to you as a respected and reputable member of the legal services industry. Additional identifying details redacted. I, Mike Gagnon of St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, being of sound mind and body on this day of May 5th, 2021, do request that this email be considered as legal testimony as well as a victim impact statement in the event that some harm should come to me or that I should be rendered unable or unfit to speak for myself. I do attest to having been blackmailed and psychologically tortured for a period of no less than 8 years by one Kent Burrows in his capacity as program director of the sequential arts program at, redacted here, is a college where we were mutually employed. At most of the time in question, Mr. Burrows was my direct supervisor in my capacity as an instructor at the previously mentioned school. I affirm that I am of the belief that I can now look back and see that Mr. Burrows' potentially psychopathic grooming of me began the day we met, as professional guests sat next to each other at a convention name redacted, a comic book convention held annually in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I believe the year to have been approximately 2011. I believe that since that day, Mr. Burrows has been gaslighting and psychologically torturing me, slowly increasing over time. I believe he intentionally fostered a friendship in order to groom me and hide his true intentions for as long as possible. He created an environment where he presented himself as a mentor, even causing myself to look up to him, in order to intentionally gaslight and manipulate me. I believe his ultimate goal was eventual suicide. Mr. Burrows slowly ramped up his psychological torture over me, cyberstalking me, possibly with the help of accomplices who have been named to the RCMP, by making copies of Facebook profiles of people that I already knew, so that I would accept friend requests. These fake accounts would then send angry and harassing messages, making it appear as if all the people close to me were now angry with me. I believe this was done to induce anxiety and depression. To further his ultimate goal of psychological torture, he fabricated a sexual harassment claim from a student in order to blackmail me. In approximately 2016, I made a complaint about a lack of professionalism in the classroom environment at the school. Mr. Burrows then requested that I meet him at a location off campus and away from the school, where he told me that if I did not back off, a female student would make a claim of sexual harassment against me. He actually didn't have any information and asked me to explain how that could happen. I had to rack my brain and really stretch to come up with any interaction that could have been misconstrued as sexual harassment. But once I did, he latched on and said, "Yes, that's it," and has held it over my head ever since, reminding me on numerous occasions that this allegation was the reason for my reduced teaching hours, and that no one would believe me because the student, personal details redacted, but gave a reason to me that made no sense then, still doesn't now, using personal information about a student. And therefore had no reason to lie because all of her bills were paid. I have personally made numerous attempts to confront and address this over subsequent years, both by email and in person, only to have them all dodged and avoided by Mr. Burrows. All along, Mr. Burrows presented the impression that he was representing the school in his capacity as the senior-most program director of the sequential arts program, that the school was aware and that they did not believe me, but were keeping me on staff as a favor to me. With no full-time staff members senior to his role, I was apprehensive and ashamed by the allegation, so I did not go above him, which would have meant confronting one of the school owners, both of whom are semi-retired and not involved in the day-to-day administration of the program. It has only been recently confirmed that the student in question was never involved or aware of the allegation, and that she never had any claim or complaint of harassment against me. Mr. Burrows manipulated me into giving him the information he used against me in order to psychologically torture me for years. I believe that this is a pattern that he continued by using information gleaned directly and indirectly through the fake Facebook profiles that he or accomplices created to cyberstalk and harass me. I do not believe I yet know any motivation on the part of Mr. Burrows other than potential psychopathy. Around the same time that the blackmail began, Mr. Burrows also began forcing me to approve undeserved exemption applications from students. When I raised concerns about students not demonstrating the skills required for exemption, I was pressured to coach, revise, tutor, provide private lessons on content that would have been in the course, and all but complete required assignments for students to complete their exemption application. In fact, I was pressured to provide templates so students applying for exemptions could just paste their art into the file and hand it in. Requests were always sent directly by Kent and were always for female students. For the longest time, I thought he must have been sleeping with these students. In order to protect myself, I began secretly collecting documents, correspondence, legal and psychiatric counsel in order to back myself up and protect myself from this false accusation. I also began waiting and watching and learning who I could trust and insulating myself with a core of people that I could trust. It took over 5 years. Not even my girlfriend knew until the day I blew the whistle. This evidence has been made available to regional police as well as the National Security Division of the RCMP for investigation and examination. I am holding and considering further release of evidence to media contacts should it be required. In the time I was gathering evidence and being gaslit by Mr. Burrows, I was manipulated into feeling isolated and afraid to seek help, that I would not be believed. It caused increasing anxiety and depression, as well as exacerbating existing childhood trauma. I believe that Mr. Burrows' manipulations were very nearly drove me to suicide multiple times. Even after blowing the whistle, Mr. Burrows and accomplices have attempted to harass and gaslight myself and my girlfriend, name redacted, by text, social media, and even attempted doxing to known white supremacy message boards, known to be used for targeting people for harassment. During the 5 years of waiting and observing, I also noticed a pattern in the types of people and social circles that Mr. Burrows moved in. The only people that I've ever openly heard him advocate that the school hire are known members of white supremacy and hate groups. At first, it didn't seem obviously related, but now I'm noticing that all of the students that were pushed through were, for lack of a better term, attractive white girls. I think maybe he's pushing them through to get them into the industry faster in order to blackmail and recruit, or at least compromise more people. I've also heard some of these students mention Kent having a secret room in the ceiling on the 4th floor of the school. My guess is there may be something there that proves my claim. In light of the drastic character flaws that I clearly missed upon our first meeting, I can't help but feel like this is the most likely hypothesis, especially since the attempted harassment since I have blown the whistle. This leaves me with not only anxiety, depression, and worsened pre-existing trauma and PTSD, but now also fearing for my life, as I worry that he or an accomplice are going to show up at my home and attempt to harm me. Whether this fear is legitimate or a distorted perception of his evil caused by the trauma of his psychological torture, I don't know. I do believe that my fear in itself and my feeling the need to write this letter as insurance is proof of the effects of Mr. Burrows' psychological torture and capacity to be capable of the horrible things that I've suggested. In approximately December of 2020, I came forward and told the owner, another faculty member, even a few students that I trusted and explained what was happening, and that if I came back to teach there again and it kept happening, I was going to blow my top and blow the whistle. We essentially all led him into a trap that he can't explain his way out of, and now I'm being left to wonder what happened and if Mr. Burrows is still employed at the school. When I came forward to the authorities, Toronto police sent me to Niagara, Niagara to Hamilton, Hamilton to Halton, Halton back to Niagara. So they all have some details, but don't seem to want to communicate. So I had no choice but to contact the Domestic Security Department of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, forwarding some of the details contained in this message to them, as well as a list of suspected accomplices that have been seen in his company that are also connected to my personal life. I, Mike Gagno, do hereby attest that this message is the most thorough and concise statement that I have been able to make regarding my blackmail and psychological torture at the hands of Kent Burrows as of May 5th, 2021. This statement, in combination with details and list of potential accomplices provided to the RCMP, along with documentation made available to the RCMP, will provide more than enough detail and context to prove my claim. I also hereby attest that I am asking, lawyer name redacted, to hold this information safe and release it to selected contacts in the event that harm should come to me before I have a chance to testify against Mr. Burrows. Should anything happen to me, please forward these details to trusted media and PR sources redacted, along with any other media contacts that I may name in the future or in the event that I give the okay to do so in the future. Humbly and respectfully yours, Mike Gagno, St. Catharines, Ontario, May 5th, 2021. So, that was written by me. If you hadn't figured that out yet, I am Mike. I wrote that on May 5th. Today is July 7th. So, just over 2 full months since I posted that online. In the time before and since then, I have been gathering saved files, information. I've kept every email, text, screenshots for a long time. And thus far, please excuse me, I apologize. Thus far, um, the the majority of what I've sent to the RCMP has been notes I've collected on suspicious actions, behaviors, people that I've seen physically with my own eyes in the company of this person who are also connected to me. Um, and whether or not these people are helping, or maybe he's befriended them and is just getting information through them, uh, through through conversation, I don't know. But what I can tell you is that there are other students, there are other victims, there are other faculty um, that are aware and that know. And the RCMP does have a lot of information and is investigating. And I have all of the messages, and I have been and continue to do so. Go through all of my files saved over the last 10 years and forwarding chronologically in order every email that traces this entire situation. A lot of it is one-sided because he would often not respond when directly called out. But